Welcome to this video. In our last video, we made this drop-down using a custom hook useDropDown. And now we can select different countries and the app will bring fresh data for this particular country that we have selected from this drop-down box and show us the number of infected people, recovered, and deaths. Now, in this video, we are going to make charts, different charts using package Chart.js, and we will be representing this data in the form of charts to graphically show it to the users of our app. For that, we have already installed in our package.json React Chart JS-2 and Chart.js. So we are going to make a new folder here inside the components folder, and we will name it charts. Inside charts, we will make a file constants.js, export const chart types. This will be an array where we will store the types of charts that we are going to use in this app. We will use bar chart, donut chart, horizontal bar chart, line chart. Line chart will be used only for the global data. So we are writing global data here so that the user knows that when the user selects line chart, the data shown in the line chart will be for the whole world and not for any particular country. Therefore, we are going to write this global data with line chart. We will be using a pie chart. We will also use a polar chart. And the last but not the least is a radar chart. So these are the kind of charts that we are going to use in our app. And using our custom hook useDropDown, you remember we made a custom hook useDropDown in our last lecture over here. Let's just have a look at it here. So using this custom hook useDropDown that we have made, we will be using another drop-down box where the user can select a particular chart from all these types of chart that we are going to make, and the data that we fetch from the API will be visually shown, graphically shown using one of these charts depending on which chart the user selects from the drop-down that we are going to make. And that drop-down will be made automatically by using our custom hook drop-down maker. If you are new on this video, if you have stumbled upon this video without watching our previous videos, you can go back in this list of videos and you can see the previous video where we have shown in detail how do you make how do you write a custom hook. So this was the code that we wrote in our previous video, and here we are exporting this useDropDown, and using this exported useDropDown custom hook, we will make a drop-down with all these charts showing inside that chart. Okay, let's make another file here inside the charts folder, and this is the CSS file that we are going to use. I'm going to stop the video because I'm not going to explain the CSS chart. This is not a video for explaining CSS. So after I have written this code, I will stop the video again. Okay, so this is the CSS that we are going to use, charts.css. And now we are going to make another file inside this charts folder. Let's name it chart.jsx. So we start from importing React. We will also import useState and use useEffect hook from package React. We will also import the different types of charts that we are going to use. React Chart.js 2 from this library. What we are going to import is a line chart, bar chart, horizontal bar chart, pie chart, polar chart, donuts, and radar. So these are the type of charts that we are going to import from React Chart.js Stage 2 library. We also need to import data, the COVID data that we fetch from API, and that is inside the, we go one level up, we go to the API, because there we have written it in the file index. So here we fetch data, and the name of the method that fetches data is fetch COVID daily data. That is what we are going to use. Fetch daily COVID data. And fetch COVID daily data, if you go to the daily data here, this is the URL for the fetch COVID daily data /API/daily. Here you can see the URL. So here, that is what we are going to get, an array, and that array has objects. And here we can see deaths, we can see recovered, and other parameters, for example, confirmed deaths recovered, and even report date we have all here. So let's go back to our JSX file, and we need to import styles from the CSS file. Chart.css. Let's check it out. It's charts.css. We can rename it to just chart.css. It's okay, we can rename it here. So we can rename it here. We can use the name charts.css over here instead. Let's start writing the component chart. We can begin it with the capital letter charts, and it will take some arguments. We are coming back to the arguments. Let's first write the function and export it here. Export default chart. Okay. So the props that it is going to get are, well, what is the chart type that we want? So the component app.js will compose this component chart that we will export here, that we are going to export from here. This will be composed inside app component app.js, and that parent component will pass this information chart type, that what type of chart do I want? Do I want a line chart? Do I want a bar chart? Do I want a pie chart? So this information will be passed by the parent component chart type. The parent component also needs to pass country. So when we select a country over there from the user interface, that information should be passed by the parent component app.js to this child component chart.js. So this is the country. And then we get data from the API, we get an object, and from that object we destructure data, and then from that data we further destructure confirmed, as we have seen there, that we get confirmed here, deaths, recovered, and confirmed. So we are going to destructure here, confirmed, recovered, and deaths. So these are the props that we are getting, and we are destructuring chart type from it, country from it, data from it, and from data we further destructure confirmed, recovered, and deaths. Okay, we start from a variable data for all except line chart. So, as the name shows, that this data is not for the line chart. For line chart, we have a special API over here, as we have seen here, and we will be getting data from this API, which is about the daily infected and daily deaths and daily recovered cases for the whole world. It's not country-wise. So this data is for all other cases, for country-wise cases, and not for the line chart. So this data, we are going to use this variable, the data represented by this variable, for all other countries, but not for the global data that we fetch from the API. Before assigning any object to this, we need to check the confirmed. Sorry, I misfilled. This is confirmed. So we have to check, because if the number of confirmed, if this variable confirmed that we get from the API, if this object is null or it is undefined, then we are going to, the app is going to throw error. Therefore, we have to check it first. If confirmed, then we assign an object to this variable. And inside, we are going to have different properties. The first one property is labels. Okay, let's see what labels we are going to use. We will have a chart over here, and we will have labels. The labels that we are going to have is infected, recovered, and deaths. So these three labels, we need to pass them in an array here as strings. Infected, recovered, deaths. So the property label has this array as value with 3 strings. And then we have background color. This is, for example, if you look at here, the background color for this, and for this. So the background colors are going to be an RGB. RGBA 0, 0, 255, 0.5. Passing it as a string. And then we have 0, 255 here, 0 here, and 0.5. 255 here. 0, 0, and 0.5. So this was the second property, background color. And the third property is the actual data that we are showing there. If you look at the graph, so this height is the number, represents the number of infected. This shows the number of recovered, like 25,903 recovered, and this is the number of deaths. So this is the actual data that we are going to pass over here, and this actual data was passed as a props to this component over here, and we have destructured it from the props data, confirmed, recovered, and deaths. So that is the actual data that we are going to pass it over here. Confirmed dot value. So this is the data that we get from API here. So this is the data that we get here from the API. So we pass it here, confirm.value, and then we have recover.value, and then we have deaths.value. So this is the object that shows data for all except the line charts. So we have written it once, but we will be using in all the different charts, 5 or 6 different charts that we are going to make. So it makes it easy for us. Instead of writing it inside every chart component, we have written it once over here. We have defined this component here at the top. And when we are writing different components, making different components for different charts, we will be passing this object just to those chart components for the data that we need to pass as a component. Now, let's bring data from the API. Bring Covid-19 daily data from the API. Since we are bringing data from the API, it is something that is happening outside this function. The function is not pivot, it has side effects. So we are going to use the useEffect hook. We have explained the useEffect hook in our previous video. Please watch that video if you haven't watched that one. So here we are going to fetch data. First we need state over here. So we are going to start this with an empty object. Initialize it with an empty object. We can name it daily COVID data, set daily COVID data, and then we need to use our useEffect hook. This function that we are going to write is going to be asynchronous. It doesn't get any arguments. And it calls another function set daily COVID data that we have imported over here. Set daily COVID data is this. We are going to update this data, the status, and we are going to use a function that we have imported over here, fetch daily COVID data. So this is the function that we have already written in this file. Here, fetch COVID data. Here is fetch countries data, and here is fetch daily COVID data. This is the function that fetches the data for the daily infected, recovered, and death cases. We can destructure the recovered also over here. And now that we have destructured the recovered, we can retrieve the total for the recovered also. So this is our fetch daily COVID data. When we map over this data that we get from Axios, that we fetch from the server, the data is already in an array. That is why we are mapping over it using the map functions. So we also get this recovered from this data, and we can retrieve the total from this recovered.total. And we send back this array, and this array that we are sending back has objects with these properties: confirmed, recovered, deaths, and date. So this function has been imported over here, and we are going to use it here, passing as an argument to this setter function. And we don't need to call in to pass any country, because this is for the whole world, for the globe. So what we are going here is that we are calling this function which we have imported. We are using await and async because it's an asynchronous call. And then we are calling this setter and passing their data here, and the data is now available here in this variable daily COVID data. Okay, now that we have fetched our data, we are ready to begin with the first chart. Let's start with horizontal bar chart. So we are going to make a function. It can be named as a horizontal bar chart. You can give it any name. And we are going to check it here with the same variable confirmed that we checked over here. If the confirmed is null, if the number of defined here, the number of deaths infected recovered, if this is null, but we are just checking this confirmed, if this object is null, if it's not defined, then we pass back null. So we are going to check this here, confirmed, this is true case, and then we have a false case. Okay, so in the false case, we are just sending back a null. If confirmed is not true, then we send null. But if confirmed is true, then we make this chart horizontal bar chart and send this chart back instead. So what we are going to do is that we are now writing code over here for this true case. So we have horizontal bar chart. This is the chart component that we have imported over here from React-based Chart.js 2 library. So this horizontal bar, we have composed that component. And data, we are going to pass it data. Since we are in a JSX file, so we have to use these curly brackets. And here is our data for all except line charts, because this is not a line chart. So we get the data from the component that will compose this component, and we get it as props over here. And we make an object out of that data, which we get as props. So we are going to pass that data over here. Instead of repeating this data, writing it inside every component that we are going to make. We are going to make 6-7 different components for all the different charts that we are going to use in this app. So we just write this one line of code instead of writing all this data inside each component again and again. So that was the purpose of making that component. So now we are passing that object over here. So data gets this object. And here are different options that we are going to pass for this chart. So these options are for this chart. If you're using the same options for all the different charts that you are using in your 6, 7, 8 charts, so you can also make an object like we did for this data over there. You can make just one object options, and you can just pass each component that options just in one line. But I am using different options for different charts. I'm tweaking them in a different way. That is why I'm passing options. I'm not passing options as an object, as a ready-made object that I write up there. Instead, I'm doing it here for each chart. So legend for this graph. I don't want, for this horizontal bar chart, I don't want any legend. Therefore, I set the display to false. The title. Let me show you the title. For example, this title. This like current state in Afghanistan. So this title, this is also an object. Display, since I want to see the title, so I will set it to true. And what text do I want to show there as a title? I'm using backticks. Remember here, these are backticks. Current state in, and then I want to use the name of the country that I got as props over there. So we got this country as props over here that we destructured from the object that we got as props here, and that has been used over here to show the country here. So when you select a different country, you will see it here. Current state in Pakistan, current state in India, current state in China, current state in Sweden. So that is what you are going to see over here. This is the display is true and current state and then the variable country. Okay, so that was all about the true case over here when it is true. But if it is not true, then what you are going to pass is just a null. So now we are ready with the horizontal bar chart component. I'm not going to explain all the other charts components because almost all are the same. We are going to pass it data and we are going to pass different options over here in order to tweak them. Let's copy this. We can write a H here and we can rename our new chart to bar chart. So this one is a bar chart. This is not horizontal. That is the difference. It's also a bar chart, but it's not horizontal. This is vertical. So this is a vertical bar chart. Okay, here we just change it to bar. We have already imported bar over here up. This one from React Chart.js 2. Data is the same. Let's see if we can use different options. Do you want to see the legend? No, we don't want to see the legend. The title, do you want to see the title? Yes, we want to see the title. So there is actually nothing to change. So we are ready. Let's start our new chart. Next one. Doughnut chart. Here is our Doughnut. We have already imported over there. So we pass the data. We have options. We want to see the legend here. So we set it to true. That is what we have said already, that we might use different options for the different charts. That's why we are using options over here. So I want to see the legend over here. I also want to see the display over here. So we are ready with the Doughnut chart. We move to the next one. And this chart is going to be a pie chart. Just going to rename it as pie chart. The name here is, as you can see here, pie. Data is the same. I want to see the legend, so I'm going to set it to true. And I want to display the title. And I'm ready with the pie chart. Let's start with the next chart, polar chart. I can just copy this pie chart and I can rename it to polar chart. And then I need to compose the polar that we have imported above. Data is the same that we are passing it the data object. Options, I want to see the legend, and I also want to see the title. Okay, so we are ready. Let's start with the next chart, radar chart. Compose the radar chart imported above. Data, I don't want to see the data here, so I'll set it to false, but I want to see the title, so I'll set that to true. Okay. Line chart. Remember that this chart is not using the data. That data is for all charts except the line chart. We are going to use the global data and not for any country, individual country. Compose the line chart that we have imported above. Okay, this component expects props in another way, another format. So we are going to delete all this, and now we have just the basic component, line component that we have imported, and we are going to pass the props. The props that it expects is data, and inside this object we have labels. You know that we have this daily COVID data that we are fetching the data inside the useEffect here above that we wrote in the beginning over here, this one. So we have this daily COVID data and set daily COVID data. We fetch the data, we use the setter and set it, and we have the data available here in daily COVID data. So this is what we are going to use over there. We can retrieve labels from that as well. So we have daily COVID data, and we map over this using the function map. Okay, and when we map over this, so we destructure from that date because we want to show the date. So we get a date over there and we return that date just over here. Then we are going to have data sets, and data sets is an array, and inside this array we are going to have objects. So inside the first object we have two objects over here inside this array. Inside the first object we have data. We use our daily COVID data, map over it, we get data over here, when we map over it, and then from that data the number of confirmed, we retrieve the number of confirmed from that data. The label that we are going to use is infected. Border color. You can use any colors that you want. I'm going to use 3333FF. Fill, I'm going to use true. So this was the first object, which shows the number of infected, as you can see here from the label. Data.confirmed, how many are infected globally. And the next object, I'm going to use the same format, data, daily COVID data. I can just copy this. We copy the whole. So I map over the data, but this time I retrieve the number of deaths. And as you can guess, it would be deaths over here, the label. And since we are representing death, which is something considered something dangerous, that we are going to use the red color for that. For the border color. For the background color, RGBA, and then we use 255 0 0 0.5 and fill true. So here we are not showing recovered. As you can see in the line chart, we are just using two parameters, infected and deaths. So we are going to have two labels and two lines. Since this is a line chart, so data will be represented by lines, and we will have two lines, one for the infected and one for the death, for those that are death cases. Now that we are done with all the charts, so we have so many different components, we do not need to return all these components. As you know, we need to return one of those components, either line charts, which represents the global data, or any one of all the other charts that represent data for a country. For example, radar chart or a pie chart or a bar diagram chart. So we need to write a switch case so that we can select which one to send. So let's write a switch over here, chart to send function. It will be using a switch. And chart type, we are going to use this chart type, which we will get from the app.js component, the parent component of this component. Here, this chart type. So using that parameter, that props that we have destructured above, we will be selecting which chart to send back to the parent component. So we have different components. Let's start with the line chart. Let's help the user by telling the user that the line chart, if you want to see the line chart, so this line chart is only for the global data. So that is why we are writing here line global data case. Because if you remember, we have here an array of consonants, and here we have different charts, and these members of this array, these elements, these will be shown to the user on the user interface as a list. And here, this is what the user is going to see. So we have to write it exactly like this. So like I don't have a space over here, but I have a space over there. So I should have a space over here, because when I get this chart type, this might have this space. So you should copy it exactly from this constant.js over here. If this is the case, then we need to return the line chart. So simple. Return line chart. Since we are returning over here, so break is not needed, because this will never be executed. So we need to go back to the other case. Okay, if this is the case is bar chart, then we need to return bar chart, and so on. So I'm now going to stop the video and write the other cases of this switch. So we have all these cases, and for default, let's say we can select the line chart. Now that we have this function chart.to_send, which can help us select one of the charts that we are going to send from this component that we are exporting, this chart component. We can begin here with the return, what we are going to return from this function. So we will return a div. You can use the class that we have written in the CSS file. And here inside this div, we are going to check the country. Remember that we get the country as a parameter by the parent component of this component. The parent component in this app is app.js because we are going to compose this component inside app.js. That parent will send as a props this country, that I want to show data for this country. So that country we are going to check first. If it is true, if it is here, okay, we are using this not. So if the country is not set, you can guess. If the country is not set, that means that this is a line chart. Or if the country is set, but the value is global. Remember in our previous video that we are pushing global as a first element at index 0 of each array. We retrieve an array of countries from the API, and then at index 0 of that array we insert global to show the global data for Covid-19, for the corona cases. So the first at index 0 is global. So we are checking if it is global, if the country is global, or if the country is not set, then show line chart. In this case, show line chart. If that is not the case, this means that we want to show graphically the data, COVID data about a particular country. So then we use our function that we have written, chart.to_send. And that chart.to_send will automatically decide on the basis of this chart type which chart to send. And that chart will be sent from this component that we are exporting over here. Now let's import this chart in app.js, the parent component. So first we need to import it. We go to the components folder, we go to the charts folder, and then we have charts there. So now this chart as a component will be used over here inside the app. And if you remember, we have to pass here the data. Remember that we are retrieving data only for the global case over there in that component, in the chart component. But for the individual countries, we are retrieving the data here in the app component, and we are passing it as props to the chart component. So we will pass that data over here. We also need to pass country over from this app component, the parent component. And we also want to inform the child component about the chart type that we want to see. So these are the three props that we are passing from here: data, country, and chart type. Now we need to make the user interface part. We need to make a drop-down countries where we will be showing all the different types of charts available to the user of this app. For that, we need to first import from our constants file that we have inside the components folder. We have inside the charts, we have consonants. And from there, we can import the chart types and we can rename it here as a charts list. Just to be consistent, like we have already a drop-down box here for the countries where the user can select a country, and we are passing a country list. Just to be consistent, we are passing a chart list here for the charts. We can pass this as well, but just to be consistent, here we have a country list, so we have here as a chart list. So we'll be passing a charts list so that the user can select from a drop-down box which chart does the user want to see. So now that we have imported over here, let's use it here. Charts list, select a chart. We don't want to initialize it with anything. We want to initialize it with an empty string. We are using our useDropDown hook, which we wrote in our previous video. Our custom hook, we explained in detail how to write a custom hook. We wrote a custom hook to make drop-downs. So just with one line of code, we created a whole drop-down that shows countries. Here we want to create another drop-down which will show different types of charts. So here we can use the name chart type. This is what we are passing here to the component over here. This one, chart type. And then we need a setter function. And that setter function, it will be returned. And this custom hook, useDropDown, will return these two. We just destructure to this returns an array of three things: chart type, a setter of chart type, and the drop-down box for chart type itself. So you can name it chart type drop-down so that we know what it is. So we have a chart type and a chart type drop-down. When we use this drop-down custom hook, so we get three things, but we need two of them. So that is why we are using the two of them over here, the chart type and the chart type drop-down. We can use this chart type drop-down now over here. If you want to have it below the chart, so you can have it below the chart. If you want to show it above the chart, so you can show the drop-down box above the chart, and then you need to paste it here above this line. And that was all. You have now a chart drop-down where the user can go and select the chart, any chart. Okay, let's just refresh the folder because I have a folder. I have copied and pasted a folder images where I have just one image. This image for COVID-19, you can find any picture on the internet. So I have just found it on the internet, which was free to use, covid19.png. I have made a folder images inside the source folder. I'm going to use that inside here. First I need to import it here. Images, and then the name of the file is covid19.png. And I want to return it here as well, the first thing inside this container. Class name we are going to use it is styles.image. And for the source src Covid19 and alt for the image. Okay, so now we have an image component, then we have a COVID card component, and then we have the country drop down where the user can select a country. Then we show the chart, and then we have the chart type drop down where the user can select the type of the chart that they want to see. And then here we are exporting the app which we are using inside the index.js. Let's see the index.js. Here we are composing the app which we have imported over here. So we have composed here inside the index.js. And if we look at the index.html, which is inside the public folder, here we have the title. And just the root over here. That's all. So let's look at the terminal. And here are some warnings. Fetch daily data is assigned a value but never used. Oh, so we are fetching the data in line 31 and the file is chart.js. Chart.js, line 31. Oh my goodness, we have written the function, but we are not calling the function, which means that we will not get the data. The data will not be fetched from the server. So we have to call this fetch daily data function over here if we want to fetch data. And moreover, we have to give here, pass here an array, an empty array, which means that we want to re-render this component only at loading and unloading time. So the useEffect function will run at the loading and unloading, and not if the country changes, or not when the chart changes, the type of chart changes. If a user selects a different chart, we don't want to fetch new data, because the same data, it's fetch daily COVID data is fetching data once, and that data is being fetched once this component loads, and that is enough for us, because this is a daily data and we get it for the previous day actually. So if you check on the console, I have checked on the console.logs, there you can see that the array that we get, the last element is for the data for yesterday and not for today. Okay, and then here we have pie chart is assigned a value but never used. So we have a pie chart somewhere that we have, but we have not used it. So I can just use Control F. Yes, here is our pie chart function. It seems as if we are not using it here in the switch. So we have to check our switch. Yes, we have line chart, bar chart, horizontal bar, donut, pie, and for pie chart we are sending the polar chart back, which is not the correct type of chart. So we need to send back the pie chart. And for the polar chart, we are sending back polar chart. For radar chart, line chart is default, donut chart, horizontal bar chart, line chart. Okay, so this was the switch. One thing more here for the line chart, we are checking confirmed for all the other cases. For the line chart that shows the global data, we don't need to check the confirmed, because here we can see that this /API/dairy, this URL that fetches that we fetch data from, it has an array. An array has different objects, and this is a very long array. So we just need to check the element at index 0, the first element, if it is true, if it is not null. So it means that we have data. Checking the first element is enough, even if we have just one element, which means that we have at least data for 1 day. So we need to check this at element 0, daily COVID data at index 0, that this should be true. If this is true, then do this. Otherwise, return null over here, which should be the false case. If it is true, then represent the line chart, even for 1 day, because we are driving a chart between the number of infected and the number of deaths. So even 1 day, data for 1 day is enough for us. But we are not using data for 1 day. We are using all the data that is available and has been fetched from the API, but we are just checking here the first element. If it is true, then we have at least some data to make a line chart out of. So let's see now, after saving everything. Okay, so here is our country chart, and here is our selector chart. So we have to see that for a global, if you have selected country as global, then we have just the line chart. So you cannot change to another chart, because we have it in the coding. We have coded in such a way that when we have here the global, so we use the line chart. But if we change the country from here, so we should get here, let's say a pie diagram. Oh, we don't get any diagram, although we have data for Afghanistan that we have selected, 1302. Let's check polar diagram. Okay, so the component works. This makes it easy for us to find out the problem, to track down the problem, because the component is returned. Like, see, the component is returned, but the data is not showing, which means that the background colors that we are using for representing the data are not shown. So there is some problem in our object that we made in the beginning of the component, Chart.js, JSX, and the chart component, where we made one data component and then passed it to each type of chart. So we should check that part. Here is where we are making the object, if confirmed. Okay, so here's the problem. When we were making the component, then we made the labels, infected, recovered, and deaths. And after that, we have data sets. And data sets is an array. And inside that array, we have a label, people. This should be an string object. And after that, we have the background colors. So we can just move this. And after background colors, we have this data array. So we can move that as well. Let's format. And this array is for the background colors. And this data sets, we have just one data set, and this is an object. So we are going to write it inside angle bracket like this. Now we can format. So this is how our object looks like. We have the first property is label and takes an array. The next one is datasets, which is also an array. At the moment, we have just one object inside this array at index 0. Let's see now. And we can do one thing else. Let's first check our diagrams. Okay, now we have the colors. So the problem was that these colors, this is passed as an object inside the datasets. Datasets takes this object, and inside the object we have label and this background color and this data. So this data is represented by these background colors there, which we can see over here. These are the different colors that we are using. You can choose different colors as well. Okay, so now you can see that we can take a radar chart. We can choose a pie chart. We can even change a country. You can see that we have a different chart now. We can change it to bar chart. Infected, recovered, and deaths. And along the y-axis we are showing the numbers. We have Doughnut chart. You can change the country to see another one. We have horizontal bar chart. And you can see that the Cuba country is also shown over here, as current state in Cuba. In horizontal bar chart, we are showing the data horizontally, so the labels are here, deaths, recovered, and infected, whereas numbers are shown along the x-axis. Okay, if we go back to line chart, so this is global data. This is for the whole world, showing date-wise. Okay, if we go back to our app.js, where we are making the drop-downs, we can initialize our drop-downs also. For example, let's initialize it with China. Instead of an empty string for a country, this country drop-down, and for the chart type drop-down, let's do it with a bar diagram or any other diagram. You can use a pie diagram as well. And then when we go back, we automatically have China over here, and we automatically have bar diagram over here. You can tweak the CSS to make it beautiful. You can put it in the center. You can put some space between this and this and these cards. You can scale down the chart so that it doesn't take the whole screen. But overall, you know that how we have written a customized hook. useDropDown that makes drop down for us by just writing one line of code in the app.js, by composing that component over here, and just useDropDown. Here it is making a country list, taking a country list, it's taking a chart list, and we are getting these beautiful drop downs that works beautifully. And here you can change it to, let's say, pie diagram. And then we use Chart.js, made different charts, and I wrote a switch just to select the one that we want to represent the data graphically for us. Thank you very much for watching this video, and please subscribe and like this video.